Your husband wants to sleep with me.
You are a liar! How dare you say that?
The afternoon sun pressed down hard on the Mensah compound in East Legon, Accra, turning the tarmac outside a deep black and making the hibiscus along the fence droop. Abina Mensah stood at the front door with a kind of fury that comes not just from one bad day, but from years of small suspicions that had finally found a name. In her hands was a black nylon bag stuffed carelessly with dresses and rubber slippers, which she flung out toward the gate with both hands. "Get out! Get out of my house this minute!" she screamed, her voice cracking at the edges. Amma, 28 years old, stood at the bottom of the steps clutching her own small bag, eyes red and swollen. She had served in this house for 3 years, cooking, cleaning, fetching, bending. She had not imagined it would end like this, standing in the dirt while the woman she worked for hollered at her like a dog. But she had tried to do the right thing. She had told the truth, and the truth had cost her everything. "Madame, I swear on my mother's grave, it is your husband who has been—" "Shut up! Shut your dirty mouth!" Abina descended the steps, pointing a trembling finger. "You think I don't know what you are? You think I don't see the way you walk around this house?" Behind Abina, filling the doorway with his large frame and his careful face, stood Emmanuel Mensah. He wore his concern like a costume, arms folded, brow furrowed, shaking his head slowly as if deeply saddened by the whole affair. "Abina, leave her. She is not worth it. Let her go." From the upper veranda, Kofi Mensah, their 27-year-old son, stood watching. He had come out of the sound of the shouting, and now he leaned on the iron railing with his arms folded tight across his chest, jaw clenched, watching Amma leave with her bag. He knew this was coming. He had known it for months, the way you know a storm is coming before it arrives. You can smell it, feel it in the air, but there is nothing you can do except wait. Amma looked up at him once before she reached the gate, just once. Her eyes said everything her mouth could no longer say. Then she walked out, and the metal gate clanged shut behind her. Inside the house, Emmanuel would not stop talking. "Can you imagine the audacity? After everything we have done for that girl, feeding her, clothing her, paying school fees for her younger ones, and this is how she repays us, trying to destroy my name, my marriage?" He sat heavily in his armchair and loosened his collar, as if the injustice of it was physically suffocating him. Kofi said nothing. He walked straight to his room, closed the door quietly behind him, sat on the edge of his bed, and stared at the wall. He thought about all the times he had seen his father corner Amma in the kitchen when his mother was at the market, the low, urgent whispers he had heard through the corridor, the way Amma would always find something suddenly urgent to do in the opposite direction. His father was not a bad liar. He was in fact an extraordinary one. That was the part that stayed with Kofi, not the betrayal, but the fluency of it. 5 days later, a new house help arrived. Her name was Efua. She was 29, slender, with bright eyes and a wide, easy smile. She came recommended through a relative of a relative, as was the custom. Within hours of her arrival, Abina had given her the full tour, explained the routines, shown her where the cleaning supplies were kept, and was already referring to her warmly as "my dear." Kofi watched his father's face at dinner that first evening. Emmanuel had barely looked up from his phone, but Kofi noticed the way his eyes tracked Efua when she came in to set the water on the table. Just a flicker, the same flicker he had seen 3 years ago. By the second day, it had already begun. Efua was different from Amma in one important way. She was not afraid of attention. She laughed easily, moved with confidence, and when Emmanuel Mensah leaned against the kitchen counter that second afternoon and told her that she was a very beautiful young woman, she did not move away. She smiled and said thank you, and something warm spread through her chest that she did not immediately name, but would later recognize as the beginning of a very costly mistake. The first interruption came on a Wednesday night, nearly 2 weeks after Efua's arrival. It was past 11. Abina had gone to bed early with a headache. Emmanuel had stayed up, and somewhere around 11:15, he knocked softly on Efua's door at the back of the house, holding 2 glasses of red wine as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Efua opened the door. She saw the wine. She understood what the wine meant. She stepped aside to let him in. They had barely sat down when footsteps sounded in the corridor, slow, deliberate, heading toward the kitchen. Emmanuel froze. The footsteps paused outside the door. "Efua?" Kofi's voice was flat and quiet through the door. "Mommy left her medication on the kitchen counter. She is asking if you can bring it to her room." A long silence. "I'll bring it now," Efua said, her voice steady despite everything. Emmanuel stood up fast, spilling a little wine on his trousers, and moved to the window. Efua opened the door to find Kofi standing there with an expression that said absolutely nothing at all. He handed her a small bottle of pills and walked away. Emmanuel left through the back door. The second interruption came the following Saturday. Abina had traveled to Kumasi to see her sister for the weekend. The house felt different with her gone, looser somehow, as if it had exhaled. Emmanuel had been in a fine mood all day, generous with jokes, helping himself to more food than usual. That evening, he and Efua sat together on the back veranda for a long time after dinner, speaking in low tones while the crickets performed around them. When they finally went inside and the lights in her room went dark, Kofi appeared in the corridor with his laptop under his arm, knocking on the door. "Papa, I need your help with something. My laptop is doing something strange. I think it's the graphics driver. You know these things." Emmanuel, who knew nothing about graphics drivers and had never pretended otherwise, stared at his son through the cracked door for a long, burning moment. "Now?" he said. "I have to submit something by midnight," Kofi said, face completely calm. Emmanuel came out of the room. He spent 45 minutes in the living room staring at a laptop he did not understand, seething in a way he could not show. By the third interruption, Efua was beginning to understand what was happening. It was a Sunday evening, and Abina had dozed off in front of the television. Emmanuel had signaled to Efua from across the room, a slight tilt of his head toward the corridor, the private language they had developed. She had followed, slipping into the small storeroom at the end of the hall. They had barely found each other in the dark before the storeroom light clicked on. Kofi stood in the doorway holding a torch and a carton of bottled water. "I'm looking for the extra supply," he said, gesturing at the stacked bottles on the shelf behind them. "We are almost finished in the kitchen." The silence in that storeroom was enormous. Kofi took 2 bottles, turned off the light, and closed the door behind him. The fourth time, Emmanuel was already furious before it began. He had sent Kofi on an errand, deliberately, carefully, picking something that would take at least an hour, collecting a package from a relative across town, with specific instructions to wait for it in person. Kofi had gone. Emmanuel had felt the relief of a man who has finally outplayed a game he has been losing. He was in Efua's room for 11 minutes when his phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again. He picked up. "Papa?" Kofi's voice on the other end was perfectly measured. "They gave me the package, but Uncle Kwame says you need to come yourself. There is some document he needs you to sign in person. He says it is urgent." Emmanuel sat very still. "I can wait here for you," Kofi said helpfully, "or I can come back, whatever you prefer." The call ended. Emmanuel got up, dressed, and left the house. Efua lay in the dark staring at the ceiling, and for the first time, something shifted in her. The inconvenience was becoming unbearable, and behind the inconvenience was a name. "Your son," she told Emmanuel one afternoon when they were briefly alone in the garden. "He is always everywhere. He watches everything." Emmanuel's face was tight. "I know." Something needs to be done. He should visit someone for a while, his aunt maybe, or a friend. She said it plainly, without drama, which somehow made it worse. Emmanuel shook his head once firmly. "That is my son. We will not do that." Efwa said nothing more, but she filed it away. It was a Thursday morning when Kofi came down the back stairs and turned into the corridor leading to the kitchen. He heard them before he saw them, the low sound of voices, then silence, the specific silence that comes after a kiss. He stopped. He looked. His father's hands were on Efwa's face. She had her eyes closed. Emmanuel opened his eyes first and saw his son standing 7 feet away in the corridor.